Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting this evening's show. Up on the satellite system here, brought some rain in across the southeast coast today, about a third of an inch at a net. In the last 24 hours, lighter amounts up to the north, a little more showery. There was some rain this afternoon going on at Skagway, as well as Klawak, and over at Stewart. Kind of showery back up along the North Gulf Coast. Some showers developing here over the southeast interior. Some rain reported at Nabesna. And then this front here pushing up brought rain to, well, from Bristol Bay here, of course, Kodiak Island. Got some rain today, but the wind's dropping off. Easterlies pretty brisk in advance of the front. For example, up to 35 miles an hour in gusts at Klawak here. And those winds on the increase over south central Alaska. McHugh Creek getting gusts 45 to 50 miles per hour there through Turnagain Arm, and up to about 25 miles an hour at the International Airport at Anchorage. Also some gusty winds picking up Delta southeast gusts 25 to 35 miles an hour this afternoon. You can see the clearing there on the lee side of the Alaska Range, and then some thunderstorms from the Noatak Valley there to near Kotzebue, and then eastward there along that cloud area. Mostly showers up through here across the Berks Range into the eastern Arctic coast. Then you get back into some strong wind conditions up there on the east side of the Arctic coast. Winds gusting over 40 miles an hour, for example, at Dead Horse. They had gusts 43 miles an hour today, and the entire stretch of the coastline pretty windy. And on the chart here, that pulling those clouds, which IFR clouds, ceilings under 1,000 feet here along the eastern Arctic coast of the central areas, that's spreading westward throughout the day today, but still a lot of sunshine here. The Noatak Valley out into the, across the Seward Peninsula into the Bering Strait, a lot of sunshine again. This moisture kind of sliding back to the west as it comes northward with the main push off to the east here. Kind of a secondary low there over the Alaska Peninsula. So winds really dropping off behind that front, becoming lighter in the 10 to 15 mile per hour range. A few breaks here over in Alaska with scattered showers across the peninsula. Drizzle, fog, breezy conditions, low clouds, IFR for the Pribilofs, and to a lesser extent down over the central Aleutians. And then the bulk of this moisture again falling over the southern southeast coast. That's going to move through tonight up over the interior. Some thunderstorms scattered around the area with showers, and then that'll be on the decrease later this evening or after midnight, mostly restricted to this area here. And thunderstorms becoming quite isolated after midnight again. A break here through the interior, and the range shifting northward. Gusty southeast winds, gale force winds out tonight for the Gulf of Alaska and up to the North Gulf Coast. Winds coming up to 35 knots. And then showers lingering, tapering off, but they won't end completely here over the southeast coast. Probably hang on into the morning hours tomorrow. And still looking at gale force winds tonight along the entire stretch of the Arctic coast. Small craft advisories here for the Chukchi Sea areas and on down towards St. Lawrence Island. Low pressure here, very close to the Pribilof Islands, the center of, but quite a broad area of low pressure. You can see not much gradient here, so light variable winds kind of west-southwest back toward the eastern Aleutians, and then staying wet here over Kodiak Island, but the precipitation not quite as heavy as it has been. That'll be along in advance of that front, and that'll all be lifting northward to the coastline, and gusty winds continuing here with this ridging up along the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound. So very gusty winds tonight through turning an arm and cutting northwestward there across West Anchorage. Otherwise, lighter winds, but picking up here over the Aleutians, northwesterlies, 20 to 30 knots, maybe some higher gusts there. Chance of a thunderstorm developing over the Seward Peninsula. And then for Friday, looking like this, that front again stalled out right over the southwest interior due to this low dropping southeastward and weakening easterly flow there. South to north flow, though, that's going to spread a lot of moisture. Actually, another development to the front right through here. The first one washes out. So the winds will tend to decrease here along the coast tomorrow, but still in the small craft advisory range, and then tend to come back up maybe tomorrow night or late tomorrow afternoon into the evening with the approach of that next front. Showers hanging on, staying mostly cloudy. Showers over the southeast coast with the rain developing over towards Yakutat, and then that will spread in to a little bit better extent Friday night. And then that front also washes out as it comes inland, just leaving some showers and clouds behind here over the southern interior. Got a trough for Saturday up over the north central part of the state. So thunderstorms breaking out about where they did today, but probably not as far west as they were today. Mostly sunny skies from Noatak, Kivalina, Red Dog, all those areas in the Kotzebue. Another mostly sunny day on Saturday with the thunderstorms, say from just east of Selawik back across the Koyukuk Valley. Bettles, a risk of some showers, isolated thunderstorms there. On into the Yukon Valley down toward Eagle, but nothing too extensive or heavy. Scattered showers, isolated thunderstorms here, Alaska Range, Copper River Basin, especially the Wrangell Mountains. And again, the rain coming back up, and late Saturday, gale force winds will return to the North Gulf Coast from the offshore areas there. And even gale force winds possible here along the central and north coast of the Panhandle as that next system pushes in. Better chances of rain, mostly cloudy skies, occasional rain increasing in the afternoon there along the coast. Weak low here, keeping it cloudy and occasionally damp here. Areas of fog, low clouds, again, mostly IFR along and off the coast there. Some of that sweeping back in down across the Bering Sea side of the peninsula and the eastern Aleutians, but VFR conditions, sunshine there, say from not so much Chignik, but from Sand Point on out to the west there. Not a bad day for Adak and Atka, kind of in between here. High pressure, a weak ridge ahead of the next system pushing eastward, bringing rain. And increase in the winds, say 20 knots for the far western Aleutians at this point in time. And it stays pretty windy up here over the north slope and especially the eastern Arctic coast, but the whole area up there staying near gale force, 30 to 35 knots maybe on Saturday up in this area. For the temperatures this afternoon, lower to mid 60s here over south central Alaska, even with the clouds and light rain that moved in, but cooler conditions here for Prince William Sound, up mid to upper 50s there, 54 Cordova, and that 57s at Middleton Island, while 57 also reported from Yakutat. And the remainder of the Panhandle, Sitka, 62 degrees is one of the warmer locations there, and a 60-degree reading at Juneau, 59, Hoona, 61, down at Craig, 58 over at Kodiak, up to the north, lower 70s in the Tanana Valley, both at Tanana and Fairbanks, with a 62 at Bettles, 48 Anatuvik, 39 degrees at Barrow, and lower 40s for the remainder of the Arctic coast. A little more sunshine here, Cape Lisburn up to 49, and a 68-degree reading at Noatak, 66 at Kotzebue, with a 57 reported from Ambler. Shishmaref up to 63, 67 both at Nome, and over at Unalakleet with St. Michael at 68 degrees, 67 in McGrath, and 60s all the way down, lower 60s when you get out to Bethel, 57 at Macoriac, and a 55 there at Gamble. Aleutians, 50s from Shimei all the way over to Nikolsky, but on Alaska, 60 degrees today with some sunshine, lower 50s for the Pribilof, 63 degrees both at Sandpoint and Chignik. For the lows tonight, mid-50s here, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, lower 50s out over the Aleutians, near 50 here for the remainder of the Bering Sea, mid-30s up here over the north slope and the Arctic coast. That'll be the coldest areas, or chilliest, and Eagle possibly dropping down to 39 tonight with lower 40s here over towed Northway, Tok, and portions of the eastern Copper River Basin. and then back into the 50s to the mid-50s over the southern southeast coast, and upper 50s here over the northwest part of the state there, Kivalina and Red Dog. For highs tomorrow, 70-degree readings or better here from the Seward Peninsula eastward all the way over to the border, with the warmest locations again back here over the northwest with that east-northeast downsloping wind flow there. Kivalina could push up to 77 possibly, and mid-70s through the Tanana Valley. 60s south of the Alaska Range, and then upper 50s in areas of the coast, and temperatures mostly in the 60s here for the Panhandle, some areas holding in the upper 50s, and 50s out to the west. For the flying weather, lots of IFR, St. Lawrence Island, southward across all of the eastern and southeast Bering Sea, course of Pribilofs, right down into the Alaska Peninsula, on over to Unalaska there. Lots of marginal conditions back to the west with some breaks. That'll be on the lee side or the southern parts of the islands out there over the Aleutians. IFR along and just on the western slopes of the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, back through the Barren Islands, up along the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula into western Prince William Sound. Again, that flow coming around like that, so a big swath of IFR will be pushing in toward the coastline of the Panhandle, and conditions coming down, spreading marginal VFR probably during the morning hours eastward and northward there, after starting out with some VFR conditions. And the eastern Arctic coast, lowest conditions will be on the east side, possibly VFR or that offshore wind flow to the west there, and then some morning marginal VFR all the way down to the eastern Brooks Range here on the north slopes, and that'll be breaking out through the afternoon with some thunderstorm activity roughly in this area here. For Anaktuvuk, marginal VFR conditions become VFR probably by late morning tomorrow. Same forecast for Adigan. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, lowest conditions on the eastern entrances, possibly of the IFR varieties. And rainy, that same forecast, marginal VFR with IFR in the eastern entrance, better conditions to the west, and windy VFR for Isabel, VFR flying there. Mentasta, VFR, risk of an isolated thunderstorm, and Tanita, marginal VFR developing on the eastern entrance, otherwise VFR through the pass and on out to the west. Portage, IFR, an easy one. Chilkoot and White, VFR gradually becoming marginal throughout the late morning hours, certainly by the mid-afternoon time frame. And for freezing levels, about 8,000 feet here up over the interior from north to south. Leftover cool pocket here that was a little more to the west here today. That'll be slipping eastward over the northern Panhandle. Still not much of a thermal gradient across any of the area until you get out to the Aleutians, 10 to 12, 14,000 feet out in that area. For icing threats, isolated Apache here over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta and to a point offshore. Also some possible icing conditions of the mixed or rime varieties here over the eastern Aleutians coming back toward Atka, but a big area here with all the moisture and the storm system pushing northward in toward the southeast coast, spreading up to the North Gulf Coast and then back to the west-northwest across just about all of south central Alaska. And for the winds aloft, upper level low pressure coming in toward Bristol Bay at 18,000 feet. Good northwest winds back behind that, up to 130 knots coming down across the west central Aleutians and diving southward, coming back up, but ridging right over the Panhandle. But this flow coming through, that's going to keep it at least showery and then eventually pull those frontal systems on into the area. For 9,000 feet south to north flow here, pretty brisk, up to 35 knots right into the Kenai Peninsula tomorrow, and then a band of that at about 30 knots into Norton Sound and the Seward Peninsula, and then really dropping off as you head down the southeast coast. Easterly winds strongest at this level on the western Arctic coast, up to 30 knots, and northerlies up to 55 knots there over the west central Aleutians. And that holds at about 3,000 feet. Again, this northerly wind about 40 knots from Russia there all the way down to the west central Aleutians, but significantly less in toward the eastern areas on Nikolsky and Alaska. And light and variable actually here with a low center over the Alaska Peninsula, and then southeasterlies 25 knots over the southern Alaska or the western Alaska range here, 45 knots out in the Gulf of Alaska, diminishing on up to the north, but staying very brisk there from the east to northeast along the Arctic coast. and lighter winds in over the Panhandle. So turbulence looks something like this here. Moderate chop coming up to the coastline, staying west of the southeast coast, but extending in across the Kenai Peninsula, Montague Island areas, right over almost across Kamishak Bay and toward Iliamna, and some moderate chop all the way up into the northern Cook Inlet area, probably Palmer with those gusty southeast winds, as well as Anchorage, and some bumpiness in over the interior here, but most of it staying back out to the west or on up to the north, with the bumpiest conditions occurring over the western Arctic coast. Light to isolated moderate chop all the way over to Demarcation Point, and then the stronger north and northwesterly winds out here to the west, and that's where the moderate turbulence will be, which looks like it'll be from about Adak on out to Kiska Island and northward across the western Bering Sea, which is to the west of the Pribilof Islands here, but some of that'll catch St. Lawrence Island. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Looking north and south in the summer sky.
Hey there, stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Plot Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. We're here to help you find your way around the sky tonight. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west, right?
For the most part.
And the moon, planets, and stars rise in the east and set in the west too. So how do the stars move in the north and south?
Oh, I see where this is going. We're going to do some spinning in this episode, aren't we?
Yep. First, we're going to show you the stars and constellations you can find in the northern and southern sky.
And then we'll demonstrate how the sky seems to move over the course of a night in each direction. Hold on tight, let's get spinning.
Okay, we have our sky set to 10 p.m. facing north any night this week. What's the first thing you notice?
The Big Dipper, of course. It's about halfway up in the northwestern sky. 4 brighter stars make a cup, and 3 more make a curved handle.
And since we're facing north, the North Star, or Polaris, should be here too. It's not terribly bright, but it should be as bright as the Big Dipper's stars. There it is, about halfway up in the sky.
The North Star is part of the Little Dipper, but good luck trying to find that. 4 of its 7 stars are too faint to see in most cities.
But finding the North Star is simple when you have the Big Dipper around. Simply connect the dots on the 2 outer spoon stars. Continue that line over to the right, and you'll run smack dab into the North Star.
And if you continue that line, hop over to another recognizable group of stars.
They look like the letter W.
Yep, and this is the constellation Cassiopeia the Queen. I know it doesn't look much like a queen, but the W can be her crown.
Oh, I can picture that. But the crown looks bent on one side.
Ah, I'll show you why as we go for a spin. As the night moves on, the stars in the north move like this. Notice they seem to rotate around a central point, the North Star. It's also called Polaris because it's our pole star, the star that just happens to be above our North Pole.
Yeah, like 432 light years above our North Pole. But as the Earth spins, the stars seem to make a counterclockwise circle around this spot. As the night rolls on, the Big Dipper gets lower while Cassiopeia rises up higher.
As daytime comes on, the stars are still there. We just can't see them with all the sunlight. But they continue to move around Polaris, and as we move towards afternoon, the Big Dipper is high in the sky, and Cassiopeia, bonk,
bonks her head on the ground. And that's why her crown is bent.
Exactly.
Now let's face south. It's 10 p.m. and we have 2 great summer constellations just above the horizon. Scorpius is on the right and Sagittarius is on the left.
You can recognize Scorpius by the bright red supergiant star called Antares. Antares can be really twinkly when it's low in the sky and thus stands in for the Scorpion's beating heart.
Chasing the Scorpion is the constellation Sagittarius the Archer. He's a centaur, half man, half horse, with an arrow notched in his bow. In reality, the stars you can see look more like a teapot than a centaur.
He's chasing the Scorpion because this is how the stars move over the night. In the southern sky, constellations appear to creep along the horizon. So Sagittarius follows Scorpius, and another constellation, Capricornus follows Sagittarius. Capricornus is supposed to be a sea goat, half fish, but I'd say it looks more like a goofy grin or maybe underpants.
Underpants? Anyway, these motions in the north and south are caused by one thing, the rotation of the Earth. So in the south, look for Scorpius, followed by Sagittarius, followed by Capricornus.
And in the north, look for the Big Dipper, Polaris, and Cassiopeia. Hey James, can we spin the Earth really fast just for fun?
And show days and nights fly by?
Uh-huh.
Okay, hold on.
Keep looking up!
Welcome back. Look for southeast winds, 25 knots to 30 knots here up along the north coast, lighter down along the south coast there, and in the 10 to 20 knot range here over the inside waters, and mostly southerly, again, 10 to 20 knots, Lincoln Island Glacier Bay. And then on Saturday, gale force winds possible here for the central and north coast, all from the southeast, and lighter winds, but it looks like small craft advisories will extend along even the south coast on Saturday, 25 knots. And again, that 10 to 20 knot range here over the inside waters, and about 20 from the south there, Lincoln Island Glacier Bay. Then for the North Gulf Coast, gale force winds, at least for a portion of the time tomorrow, especially possibly coming up to this value again tomorrow afternoon, depending on the timing of those developing fronts that are moving northward in that southerly wind flow. East 30, Prince William Sound, and then looks like gale force winds right in across the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay. Northeast 25 there for Shelikof Strait, and then with the low just to the west here, south winds at 15 to 20 knots there for Kodiak Island. And northeasterlies 20 to 25 knots for Cook Inlet, but again in the afternoon hours kicking around to the southeast coming out of the Turnagain Arm at about 30 knots, and that'll continue again on Saturday. Again, gale force gusts coming through Turnagain Arm, northern inlet southeast 30 knots in the afternoon, swinging around to the northeast and near and south of the Forelands up to 30 knots for Kamishak Bay from the northeast, and then dropping back to 20 knots here for Shelikof Strait. And 25 knot winds here for the Barren Islands down into the northern portion of this marine zone here on the east side of Kodiak Island. Then those will actually drop off to 10 to 15 knots down toward Sitkinak, but gales again here for the North Gulf Coast and coming back over the western areas from a more northeasterly direction. Prince William Sound variable to east up to 20 knots. For the Bristol Bay zone, light winds from the east tomorrow, even lighter winds from the same direction here on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Southwest 20 on the Pacific side there, and then from Chignik here on up to Sitkinak southeast, 10 to 15. And looking at Saturday, easterlies there, southwest of Kodiak at about 15. And east 15 also for Bristol Bay, swinging around to the northwest here for the peninsula, 15 to 20 knots with the stronger winds here on the Pacific side. Seas running 4 to 6 feet in all areas. For the Aleutians, light winds for the Fox Islands from the west-northwest, but starting to pick up here near and west of Nikolsky at about 20 knots from the northwest tomorrow afternoon. Small craft advisories northwest, 30 knots here. And gale force gusts all the way back there from Atka, gale force gusts all the way back to Siam-Chitka Island, and small craft advisories west of there. For the Saturday outlook, weak ridging here pushing eastward across the west central Aleutians, especially getting into the Adak-Atka areas in the afternoon hours. So these 20 knot winds will probably drop down to that 10 knot value you see here just to the west. 22 knots coming into the western Aleutians ahead of the next system. Small craft advisories in a narrow area now, narrower than what will be seen tomorrow. Again, near and just west of Nikolsky, otherwise 15 to 20 knots to the east there for Dutch Harbor and Alaska. And for the areas here on the southwest coast, southeast of Nunivak Island, mostly east winds tomorrow at about 10 knots, northeast 15. North of there, small craft advisories actually Gale force winds this evening for St. Lawrence Island. Those will be coming down. Looks like small crafts throughout the day tomorrow from the northeast, north 25 knots for the northern Bering Sea, but then those drop off to just 15 by the time they reach the Pribilofs. And no change there. St. Paul, St. George Island for Sunday, and the winds north at 15, northwest 20 for the northern Bering Sea, and that marine area of St. Matthew Island there with the strongest winds back to the northwest in that zone. Northeast 20 knots, St. Lawrence Island. Light variable winds here all along the southwest coast under not a ridge, but a trough of low pressure there, making for the very light wind conditions. And up along the Arctic coast, gales tonight and tomorrow, the entire stretch of the coastline there from Point Hope all the way over to Demarcation Point. Got some small craft advisories here from Tin City on up to Point Hope and probably into Kotzebue Sound as well. But these winds up here, east-northeast as high as 35 to 40 knots, some higher gusts again, and then pull some of those back. We'll go east-northeast, 30 knots here from the central coast back to the east, and then still gales in the forecast here. Western Arctic coast right down into the just west of those capes there, and northeast coming down to 20 knots for the Kotzebue Sound zone, and from Tin City on up to Point Hope. And for tonight, again, this front bringing the gale force winds into the North Gulf Coast, and continuing to increase in winds over south central Alaska this evening, especially the hillside areas, and rain spreading northward and becoming heavier here, especially along the coast, and some of that will finally be spilling in over the mountains into northern Cook Inlet, although it'll be lighter amounts, damp but less wind down toward Kodiak Island. And that front, it stays wet in the south with showers to the north. Have a great evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.